Hello, and welcome back to the Mental Health Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Rachel Harrison, and with me today is Dr. Sujata Ives, who is a career therapist, an author, and a speaker. Welcome, Dr. Sujata.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Let's begin by talking about what you refer to as the elephant in the room, which is your vocal condition. What would you like people to know about that?
Great, great. I'm so happy that you're starting with that because I want the listeners and the viewers to know there's nothing wrong with your audio. It's my vocal cords do not close. And so my voice wiggles and jiggles a little bit. And so I hope you don't mind. And I just want to thank the listeners for their support for who I am.
I love that. You've got that support for sure, and I'm glad that you've agreed to come and talk to us today. I can't wait to dig in a little bit more. So you, as a professional, focus a lot on people's careers and career counseling. And I'm very curious, how did you get started with this? What got you interested in that piece of working with people?
Well, what a great question. Well, when my parents brought me here from India, I was in grade school. And, just like many immigrants, we were going after the American dream. And I watched my father having two or three jobs at a time, my mother having two or three jobs. And when I was able, I was a student during the day. And evening, I was going to school. That was my second job. And my third job was I worked in part time retail during the weekends. So all this just equated to a very strong conscious and subconscious message that hard work was very important. And it was a value of my parents. And that transferred to me. And so I decided that I wanted to go into psychology, first of all, because of the biculturality, since I was balancing the Indian culture with the American culture. But the next thing was, I think I was destined to help people through efficient workplaces and especially creating peaceful workplaces through peaceful relationships.
Oh, that is so major. I think of all the people that I've known in my life, as well as clients, and sometimes having a stressful work relationship is something that takes a whole lot of energy from people and causes a lot of unrest, sometimes causes people to leave even work that they love doing. So you saying like a peaceful workplace, that just is the ideal for everyone, I think, right?
Yes, you're so correct in that because people leave people. They won't necessarily leave their passionate work. It takes so long to do the degree, to attain that degree, to job search, to write the resume, to write the cover letters. And so once you go through that interview process and you finally land that job, it's almost like fingers crossed that you're going to work peacefully and work amicably with your colleagues. And many times that doesn't happen due to, two reasons. It's leadership styles
Mm.
and also personality preferences.
Mm.
And so that's what my research has found.
Oh, interesting. So it could even just be a bad fit from a personality standpoint. Like to me, when you say personality style, that's not a changeable thing, right? If your boss is a particular personality and you are another one and those don't jive, there's probably not a lot that can be done about that, correct?
Well, to an extent, you're absolutely right, because that person is an authority figure.
Mm-hmm.
And that person has the authority to fire you, so to speak, right? So,
Yeah.
yes. And so, what I did, Rachel, was I decided to put pen to paper.
Mm-hmm.
And through my book, Activate Success, I've delineated the different leadership styles
Okay.
that you encounter in the workplace, and how to adapt, how to work with that particular leadership style.
Hmm.
That's what I've done at the management authority level for
Okay.
you. The
Yeah.
second thing that I've done with regard to the personality and the colleagues issue is I've put a link between your values, your stressors. So if you link your stress and mess, as I call it, at the emotional level, you I want you to directly link it to your values. So for example, uh, if you value, and this is a really simple example, but it's the mosquitoes that get you in the workplace. It's not the Bengal tigers. So this example is a little mosquito that could just make or break your day, your year. Um, let's say that you value cleanliness, but every time you go into the company break room, other people leave it a mess and they don't clean up after themselves. And so each day, this is like a little mosquito. You're going in there, it's just breaking you down day by day because you value cleanliness. And you're saying to yourself, why can't people just clean up after themselves? It's so easy. But here's the link, cleanliness is not a value of theirs.
Right.
So that's where these workplace relationships start to break down at a very sort of mosquito level. And then that transfers into the boardroom, that transfers into the teamwork, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I've given this tool that has been used in the past, but as a reminder, I say to people, use I statements that have your values.
Mm.
Get in touch with a really good feelings list and a values list. And instead of saying, you make me so mad,
Mm.
because that's going to create workplace conflict right off the bat. You have to work with these people. So rather than you make me so mad, I feel disappointed when people don't clean up after themselves.
Mm.
That sort of thing. And so what you value is being communicated. So we want people to communicate with each other. We want your needs to be met. Some people have essentials, that they can't do without, like coffee. So it's an important thing in the workplace. So I'll
Mm.
put a pause there.
No, no, I appreciate that. That's great. I think the question that's coming up for me is when we think about people's satisfaction in the workplace, I think about COVID and how much that has drastically changed the place of work to more of that online space. So I'm really curious what you're seeing as maybe some trends in more remote work and how that's creating maybe different issues or the same issues differently. I'm just interested to hear your feedback on that.
Yes, what a great question, because you know what? I believe that we just can't go backwards. You know, COVID was a historical,
Mhm.
momentous thing that happened worldwide.
Right.
And as a consequence of that, um, people became caregivers to ill parents that caught COVID or that even perished from that. Also, think about the 23 million pets,
Mm.
cats and dogs, were adopted
Wow.
between 2019 and 2022. So the fact that this newer model came about, that human resource officers and career practitioners endorsed the 2 days a week of having remote work. And of course, you know, make no bones about it, you can't be lazy. You have to put forth your work. You know, the company is trusting you to do your work remotely. So, you know, there's an empathy ethic here that's involved too. So, you know,
Interesting.
you have
Yeah.
to, yes, you have to follow the empathy ethic. So, if we're all on the same page, we all have empathy for each other, but we have to follow our ethics as well. So I personally want to see the remote work continue for two reasons. One, it has this work life balance where the person feels like they are in touch with their loved ones, their family, and their pets.
Mm.
And this is huge, huge for um, belongingness and safety and self esteem and caring for aging parents and pets and so forth. This is huge. And it's huge for morale.
Mm.
It is a real morale booster. But again, you have to prove to your boss, whatever style they have, micromanagement or macromanagement or conscious leadership or co-elevation, whatever style they have, you have to prove that you are doing your work. The competencies have to be there. You have to be competent and
Mm.
get your job done. But definitely, I'm a proponent of the newer model. Now, you may have heard that our new government is mandating that federal employees will no longer have remote work, that they have to get back into the buildings. And so, to to that, my response is I do believe the morale is going to plummet.
Mm.
You know, again, it's it's the business model that was prior to COVID, and now, you know, going backwards, I think is going to be the typical thing because people are going to now have to search for caregivers for their aging parents and caregivers for their pets.
And children.
And children, my goodness, daycare is so expensive.
It is. That's interesting too. And when you're talking about that feeling of belongingness that can come from working from home, I'm also thinking about, though, I know, I think it can also create a difficulty in connecting in the workplace, in the work environment when it's virtual instead of in person. So, are you advocating for more of a balance of both of those two things, or is it case by case, or how do you encourage somebody to
Yes.
navigate those things?
That is such a good question too, is how do you balance this? So I think that being virtual, I think is a really good thing. Twice a week, I think that this works. Now, we're getting into something called etiquette.
Mm,
And because there's etiquette in the virtual space,
true.
one thing that I do require when I have the online virtual meetings or group counseling is that you cannot black screen.
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
Do not black screen. We need to see your face and we need to see those non-verbals
Yeah.
because 80% is about nonverbal communication, 20 is your words. We need to see you, we need to feel you, we need to see who you are. So
Mm,
that's just a very important piece that is a requirement. Many companies don't think about the etiquette of things, and there'll be black screens except for two people, and you just can't have a relationship with a black screen. So I'm encouraging viewers to please show yourself. Nobody cares if your hair is not done or if it's in rollers or whatever. Or at least I don't. The fact is, you're there. You're there to make that connection, to engage, and to create those workplace relationships. And I think that's what it's about.
that's interesting. I'm thinking about the training space because I do some virtual training, and we always start off saying that the expectation is for everyone to have their camera on the whole time. They're usually very interactive trainings where we're practicing things and having discussions. It's not just a delivery of material. And it is interesting because for a lot of people that feels shocking. And I think it's because they're so accustomed to just doing that black screen kind of thing and just absorbing the information, maybe like they would be listening to a podcast and they're driving places and cleaning their house and whatever else. And so it is a very different action to be sitting in one place in front of the screen in order to interact rather than taking the meeting wherever you might go without being present yourself.
That is so key, being present. I love that word because, and the other thing that I also mention is stop the multitasking, please, because
Mm,
that also has to do with etiquette. So we really want you to be present without doing your emails or doing some other task at the same time. Just like you would show respect in person. Just
mm.
come, come with your full self and immerse yourself in this experience, whether it's presentation or a training or what have
Yeah.
you.
That concept of multitasking makes me think I see that even in person because everyone has a device now or whatever. I think even if you're standing in line somewhere or if you're on mass transit or something like that, people are no longer like, "Hey, we're on the bus, so we're either going to chat or we're going to sleep or whatever." It's everybody's got their little universe right in
Yes.
front of them. But it is interesting. I think that temptation to multitask everywhere all the time, I certainly notice it more in myself than ever. And I do wonder, like, the more we get attached to screens, it makes it feel like, oh, I'm just doing my little text over here and nobody necessarily knows, I guess. What do you think makes it easier to do that virtually versus in person, although I do think people do it in person too.
Yes, yes. And that's, it's unfortunate that people are doing it in person too, because that eye contact, I mean, all people want at the end of the day is to be heard. And so when you look at them eye to eye, that eye contact, and showing them non-verbally that you care. But Rachel, I think that this picking up the phone so much, whether it's like 500 times a day or 600 times a day, it's become a process addiction.
Hmm.
And we have, of course, alcohol addiction and so forth, gambling and so forth. But this computer, and especially the phone, the devices, is really a process addiction. And so before I get on Zoom, like for example, today, I'll just send a quick text to my family, and I'll say, look, I'm in a Zoom session from
Mm,
X time to Y time. And so just text me after 4 p.m. or whatever, unless it's
yeah.
a dire emergency.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so, people have that awareness, and you bring it into their
I
awareness.
like those boundaries. I really do. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that you were mentioning to me before we got on the call, the recording part today, and that is the idea of the intercultural movement. So I would love to hear more about that and your piece of that.
Sure. So first, I want to thank all the people that started the
Mm,
awareness of different cultures. And that movement started in the 50s, 60s time frame of multiculturalism. So multiculturalism really paved the way
mm,
for interculturalism. And so I want to thank all the researchers and the publishers because they really got us aware. I'm from a different culture. She's from a different culture. He's from a different culture. Okay, beautiful, beautiful start. And so now the United Nations and UNESCO were the very first people to take it from multiculturalism to interculturalism. Now, the buzzwords for interculturalism are two things. First is dialogues.
mm,
So they've brought that into the picture, whereas multiculturalism was just, I'm aware, you're aware, they're aware.
mm.
Now we take the next step up, which is let's dialogue. How
Yeah.
can we have these dialogues? And so UNESCO formulated a storytelling model.
Mm,
So I am in the arm of UNESCO, which is the World Council for Interculturalism, of their community coordinator. And so what we do is we are proponents of dialoguing with
mm,
people and listening to their narratives. So I think this is a beautiful thing, especially for mental health entrepreneurs who are working with different populations and different cultures. And I'll tell you, the United States is a melting pot
mhm.
of people. Everybody in the United States has come here from some other place. So
Except for native peoples,
except
right?
for indigenous,
Yeah.
yes, yes, and we recognize them. We adopt um, their seven generation philosophy. We understand it. We adopt it. We care about the land, and we are so grateful grateful to that population. And I thank the people who are working with the indigenous populations. And so different things, different schemas and our experiences will bring us to helping those different populations, right? And
Mm,
so being bicultural myself, the uh, fact that I had to balance those two cultures. And it was difficult because am I valuing the East Indian values and traditions? Am I valuing the American traditions more?
mm,
So it was a balancing act for me. And before I learned to speak English, my first teacher here in the United States put a connect the dots game in my hand.
mm,
And of course, numbers are numbers everywhere. And so the dots had numbers, and I knew exactly what to do with it. And I'll just never forget, and it had a picture of a bear.
mm,
And so I term myself as the connect the dots doctor because we need to connect the dots between
mm,
the logos, the pathos, and the system and the group and the individual. We've got to connect those dots for everybody. And Maslow gave us a
mm,
beautiful model, the hierarchy of needs. And this it doesn't only pertain to a race or a size of a demographic. Maslow's theory applies interculturally
mm,
to everybody. And so interculturalism is they're based in that theory. They're rooted in Maslow's
mm.
theory. And
Okay,
yes, and also empathy.
amazing. Well, that is all that we have time for today. I am so, so glad to learn from you about different things in the career space as well as intercultural movement here, the intercultural movement. Um, I just want to highlight for our listeners that everything that you want to find out about Dr. Sujata is in the show notes. So you can find her book, you can find more information about where to find her and how to connect. So we want to make sure you have that opportunity. And Dr. Sujata, I just want to thank you so much for what you've brought to us today. It has been a true joy.
My pleasure, Rachel. This is about women helping women. This
Mm.
is about this world coming together peacefully. And I hope that the fifth wave of psychology is going to be perspicacity, which is discernment.
Mm. On that note, we'll see you next time.